Hello.
Got me.
I got you.
You got me.
I like Halloween, I gotta say.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project Kin's very silly Halloween version of Kathy's Corner. So it's Halloween at Kathy's Corner. We're delighted to have you in all of your wonderful costumes and good cheer to talk about memories and the ways in which we've celebrated special occasions of our own childhood, our own families, and our ancestors as well. And with all of these very special Kathy's Corner events, we feature the mighty Kathy Stone, a professional genealogist with a professional photo organizer with decades of experience and personal genealogist studying her own family history, who brings to us her insight and experience as she goes through her own family history and stories. So, with that, let me turn it over to Kathy. Go ahead, please, Kathy.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just hang on. This is a very, whoops, wrong thing I clicked on. Get me go back to Zoom. There's Zoom. This is a very informal evening, as you might guess. So we just thought, well, we'll have a little fun and talk about. Hang on, I got to get these things open. I should have opened them up first. Like Zoom, and I want to share my screen with this. I was going to make a PowerPoint, but I never quite got it done, so it's just pictures now. So we want you to share your stories and your memories, your favorite photos or the objects you have, what traditions you have. And Anne and I were messaging on Substack, and she said, I have no pictures of Halloween because we didn't celebrate it. I said, that's a story too, where you come from. What is the history, the origins of Halloween? As we talked about in the advertisement, it's also All Hallows Eve, which I'm hoping someone will add a little bit of more background to what that is. My understanding of it is that the 31st of October has been chosen because it's between the light and the dark of winter, and apparently it's where the line between the human earth and the spiritual earth is the thinnest. Also, Day of the Dead is this weekend. So tell us about a person you remember. Just anybody, any person that's very important to you and you remember. We can talk about our favorite Halloween movies, our favorite music. It's a wide open chat today. And we have pictures and things. Welcome, Kathy Nielsen, who I don't think has ever been here before. It's a special day today, Kathy. It's Halloween night. So we normally have a little bit more formal structure than I'm doing right now, but here we go. So I'm going to, I did a little bit of research on the origins of Halloween, and I was quite surprised for the Canadians in the group to find out that a lot of the history of the actual celebration of Halloween as we know it today has actually got roots in Canada. Believe it or not. The first recorded one was in Vancouver in 1898, and there's a little newspaper clipping that says, the young people of Vancouver have inaugurated an innovation in the manner of celebrating Halloween night. It is that of paying friendly visits to the residences while disguised. The habit, if properly followed out and observed, is harmless. Everywhere they were warmly received and treated well. So that's from 1898, from the celebration as we know it today. Um, the origin of it is a bit confusing when you try to Google it. I don't know that we'll ever get an exact story of the origin, but it's some of it. I'm sorry, I'm reading this. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I won't put it up and make you read it, but it's found in the Celtic Autumn Festival of Samhain, which is from many, many centuries ago. The mix of harvest, supernatural beliefs, and rowdy celebrations has given the modern holiday much of its character, which I think is particularly true. By 1550, Samhain had been Christianized to become All Saints' Day, observed on November 1st tomorrow, which makes this All Hallows Eve. Um, The celebrations the night before retained some of the pagan character. The term Halloween grew out of, obviously, All Hallows Eve and was in use by the mid 1700s. So it's a very, very ancient tradition we have of Halloween. And then in Canada, what I was saying before, the division of the light and dark halves of the year, which I think is particularly true where we are, because it's really dark. It'll be dark here probably by about 5:30. It'll be dark already. Halloween costumes such as wearing disguises to ward off ghosts and offering food to appease malevolent spirits were brought to Canada in the late 1800s by Irish and Scottish immigrants. So that's where it's traced back to. The first instance of dressing in disguise, I just read you that article from 1898 in Vancouver, British Columbia. The first recorded use of the term trick or treat, which I would have expected to be from the US, was actually where it's recorded down somewhere was Lethbridge, Alberta, which is about an hour south of me here, in 1927. And this was the first use of that. Halloween became increasingly popular with adults in the 1990s, sorry, and by 2014 is estimated to be a $1 billion industry in Canada, making it second only to Christmas commercially, a success only to Christmas. So there you go. My story about Halloween is where I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. We did not say trick or treat when we went door to door. We had a different term, and we used the term Halloween apples, which I traced the origin of that down, and it originated because in the harvest, that's what people had to give out. So it started at some point again in the like 40s or 50s where they were essentially asking for Halloween apples, and it was a little bit less threatening than trick or treat. The implication being, if you don't give us a treat, we're gonna play a prank on you, which is the origin of that phrase too. My story, so I grew up that I never heard, well, I saw trick or treat in shows and things that I watched on TV, predominantly from the US. And then when I moved to Calgary, that's what all the kids say here is trick or treat. And I went, okay, well, there we go. And apparently that's now taken on in Alberta too. So here's when I used to go. Okay, where's this? Hang on here. Oh, there we go. 1 second. I'm trying to share my screen. Like I said, we're in the casual days today here. There it is. So there you have on Halloween night. That is me in the sombrero, and a friend of mine, I think dressed as a hippie, and then the witch is her little sister. So we had been out trick-or-treating, and we do have apples and things there, and that would have been how we went out that night. And back in those days, it was okay to go by yourself. Like we'd go out as kids there. I don't know how old we look there. Probably, I think I was from the 70s, so I would have been in my teen, like not quite teens. Probably that one I would say probably only 12 or 13 then. And we just went out ourselves and went through the neighborhood and collected all the candy we could, and then came back home. So that's my story. I have more pictures. Barbara now has a moving background there behind her. I'm like just there. But other stories, what were your traditions? And you can make your point again. Ann had sent me a message and said, I'm coming in costume, but I have no photos because it wasn't a celebration where I grew up. So tell us a bit.
I think we did bonfire night more on the 5th of November. So certainly now it's much more popular sort of in the UK. But when I was growing up, it was all about bonfire night, and we had lots of sort of fireworks in every garden along the road. And then it went over to more organised displays. But even those now, with the sort of the environmental impact of it, even that's winding down now. So I'm wondering if that's why Halloween has increased, because sort of celebrating bonfire night has declined.
Oh, that could be, yeah. And was bonfire night a similar celebration, like the transitioning between fall and winter, or?
No, it was all about bombing of or the attempted bombing of the Houses of Parliament in 1605, I think it was. So they were trying to kill off the king and all the Parliament and have a bit of a revolution. But it was known as the Gunpowder Plot, and they discovered it. So the way we celebrate was with great big bonfires and lots of fireworks, which was fantastic. The best part about it was the next day I used to go out with my brother, and we used to get all the old fireworks and collect up all the gunpowder and set it off in the back garden.
All right, I like that tradition. Thank you. Okay.
So, but no, we don't even. There's very few fireworks now. Even the organised displays, as I say, they're not sort of so acceptable now as they used to be. So
I think we still have lots of firework occasions, I think, here, like in America and in Canada too, for 4th of July, 1st of July.
Mm.
Okay, Faith, I'm gonna pick on you because I know you and I see a picture in the background that there must be a story behind.
Yeah. Yeah, so the picture I put up is I went out. I don't actually remember this. So if I didn't have the picture, I wouldn't have any memory. But I went out as Davy Crockett one year, and I'm not quite sure. My sister has the red pants on, and for years I always thought the other one was my other sister. And I just found out, I think probably a year or two ago, that that was a friend of my sister's. So it was kind of a shock when you've grown up with something. But I
Yeah.
think as a kid, it was always exciting to go to, for Halloween. And the big thing was, please don't let it snow, so I have to wear my snowsuit over top of my outfit. And it was funny because tonight it's about 20 here, which I'm gonna say it's like 70 Fahrenheit. Um,
It's nice.
so it's really quite warm here. And I was telling the story with as I was coming in with a couple of neighbors, and there was a couple of kids, and they're looking at me like, what's she talking about? Like a snowsuit. Then I realized, oh my gosh, I've become in that, age group that I tell those stories. So,
Yes. Go ahead. Back in the day, I remember
yeah.
having to wear a snowsuit under my clothes.
But the one thing, actually, when you were talking, Kathy, the one thing that kind of popped in my mind, and it was one of the things, the one thing that he really hated with Halloween was if you had a Halloween party ahead of time and they used to do that bobbing for apples, that they would have a basket and fill it up with, cold water and then put all those apples in it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know that all the people that were ahead of you had already put their lips and that was even before COVID and all that stuff. I was just a kid. And oh my gosh, that still grosses me out with like
Oh,
when
yeah.
that memory just came in my head and
Getting in the
I'm
water
so
and
grossed out.
everything. Eh?
So that's my story.
I'm gonna ask too. Well, anybody else have a story? I'm looking for pictures of my kids with snowsuits under their costumes right now because I must have many of those. Just pop
I
off
don't
me.
have much in the way. I don't have much while you do that searching. I don't have much in the way of pictures of myself from the Halloween's gone by because, I still don't know where the most of my kids' baby photos are. But I will say, I think looking back in my own collection, one of the things that came to mind was really how different Halloween was, particularly that October of 2020, because it was sort of in the throes of COVID and lockdowns and creatively coming to grips with just what we were going through and trying to still give the kids a good time. We don't have any little kids anymore, but our neighborhood does. And one of the things our street did was to organize families that wanted to participate. You had to sort of sign up that, yes, you were in on this. And then you had to agree that you would find a way to get food, get candy to the kids without them touching anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm up. This is my across the street neighbor, and my house is up a bit. And I developed a little projectile from a tube. It was actually a rolled up tube from like a trade show thing, and dropped candy down the chute. And they had a good time. We can get back to that, but I do have some pictures. That was, to me, just such fun. I almost want to keep recreating that. So little
Yeah.
kids don't have to run all the way up the stairs, but I have a good time throwing, I guess,
Throwing
throwing candy at them, which has its downside. But a good time was had. They were very, very cute.
Barbara,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has happened in Calgary during COVID, Kathy.
Yes, indeed. We
Where
had
they
ramp.
had chutes to
Yeah, we had
send
chutes to put the candy down.
or if they have stairs, a lot of people use the chute to send it down to the kids so they don't have to climb up the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And here, of
All right.
course,
Well, I thought I
we've
was
got
clever,
some
but
very cold Halloweens, minus 30 below or minus 20 below. Very cold Halloweens. Lots
Yeah,
of snow. Yeah.
indeed.
oof.
But they still go out. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
I can remember when the grandkids were little and Grandpa was going along with Dad and the kids. And the little one, Joshua, was about 3 or 4 years old. And he had a pillowcase to hold his things, all the goodies in. And it was dragging on the ground. It was soaking wet. And Grandpa said to Josh, "You want some help, John?" "No," he said, "that's my bag." And when you get home with it, they would sort it all out on the
Oh, yeah.
kitchen floor and give you all the ones they didn't want.
I have someone at the door. Excuse me.
Okay. Yep, kids. I told you. They're here at 3 o'clock and they're already there. Well, I'll pop up just to go with that story. As soon as I find, why do I have 2 Zoom windows open? Oh, I see now. I got it. This one. And I'm going to go share. And, oh, 1 second. So Halloween has always been a big thing. Even like for me, when I was a kid, we did Halloween all the time. And so obviously I did that when I had kids too. So this is the cold that Linda speaks of. If you you can see the kid, we managed to pick a costume with the firefighter capes, and so that we could get them over top of snowsuits. They've got boots on. My mom, who's the rabbit, and my friend who's bent over there are wearing big parkas and everything because it was cold out. But we went out anyway because that's what you do. And there they were with mitts and hats on and ready to go out. So, and obviously unedited. Whoop, that's not where I thought we were going. Okay, let's stop the share on that. And open this. Don't know where those pictures are from, but okay, try again. And then this would be one of my favorites. That's when that was their first Halloween. And so we were all ready for Halloween. They just greeted the children that year. I don't think they actually went out, but we had the pumpkin and Winnie the Pooh.
Did you make those costumes, Cal?
The pumpkin and Winnie the Pooh? No, we bought
No.
those.
For years and years and years, my kids had red onesies And every year we could use the red onesies. One year they were devil, and another year they were a ladybug. And so we made simple costumes, but every year was a red onesie.
Was a red one, yes, to reuse it. Well, we did.
Oh, they had to grow different sizes.
Yes, exactly. And this is a good one for, and Linda may know, and Kathy, you may have memories of these stories, but my mom used to tell stories that part of Halloween when she was growing up in Vermilion on the farm was one of the pranks people played was tipping over outhouses. Linda's saying yes, so I have remembered that story correctly, because this is what the things we want to record are these kind of little tidbits that get passed on from go ahead, Anne.
What's an outhouse?
Oh,
Oh.
how does one describe that? It's a little building outside that has over top of a hole in the ground, and it's got depending on how big of an outhouse it is, has a seat with a hole in it, and it's the bathroom.
Okay.
But we did not have any running water, and believe it or not, my cousins have a cabin in northern Alberta, and they still have an outhouse. So
And it got tipped over.
they tip them, they push the outhouse over because they just sit over the hole.
Yeah.
Not while someone's in there.
That would be, I guess, the bigger part of the prank. Yeah. But apparently Linda's heard that story too.
Well, ours was in town, like we lived on a farm, so we didn't do Halloweening, but Grandma and Grandpa in town, yeah, they tipped over their outhouse. I can remember way back in the in the 50s and 60s, yeah, because they didn't get running water in our little town till 1982 or sorry, 1962 or so. Yeah. So there were outhouses all through town. Yeah.
Now, the English must have some special word for an outhouse.
I wonder. I wonder.
Huh.
They've always had running water, though, I suppose. Have they? And have you always had running water?
In my lifetime, yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to have like an outside toilet, which was a little brick-built privy, if you like, at the end of the garden.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that was like plumbed in with a flushing chain and everything. So
Well, that'd
you
be
wouldn't
like an
tip
outhouse.
over.
Well, they had the similar things, like, because when I went to England a long time ago, in the old castles, we toured numerous of them where there'd be there'd be like a seat with a hole in it, and they put buckets under them, I think, in there. But that's just my faint memories from a long time ago, but visiting castles in England.
I've been to a castle where they said inside was like a little hole you sat over, but they just went to the outside and ran down the wall of the castle. And
Yes.
they were like some of the oldest stains in history apparently was running down the side of it. And it was just literally like a tube that went out the side and down into the
Outside
moat.
the castle.
Yeah,
Into the moat.
into the moat. Yeah.
So how many people did go trick-or-treating when they were kids? Everybody. What kind of treats did you get? What was your favorite treat? Go ahead, Cynthia.
I always liked caramels. So I was always,
Me,
I like chocolate,
me
but I always
too.
caramels. And I don't know if anybody, I'm just going to ask this real quick. If anybody else remembers it, I may be older, but one thing I remember, and I didn't mind it at the time because, you know, if you don't know any different, you don't know any different. But the plastic masks that we used to put on with and then it would get all hot and everything in there. And now,
And
you know,
smell
everything's
bad.
so much different. But I remember being Casper the Friendly Ghost, which was a cartoon here, and that big white, you know, plastic mask. Yep, you were ready to get that thing off by the time you got home.
And the eyes never lined up
Yeah.
with your eyes. You couldn't see.
Yeah.
You were
I'll bet with this crowd, we have so many of an age cohort. They're all the same of those masked cartoon characters. I remember Casper, you know, Batgirl, Supergirl, you know, all of those. I remember borrowing my mom's boots to be, I think it was Batgirl. I don't quite remember. Made a big impression at the time. No
Like this.
The one thing
though.
I
Yes, Porky Pig and who's the rabbit? The rabbit. I remember the
Yes,
rabbit.
the rabbit. This one's
Rabbit's
hard to
name.
see. It's, oh, maybe I can enlarge it. This is from 1933 in Edmonton, on the street with the kids dressed up with either paint or those terrible plastic masks. If any of you follow the Holderness family on Facebook, they're from the States. They're a couple. They were on The Amazing Race in the U.S. and they were all big YouTube hits, but they're quite a lot of fun. And they did a skit. They've done a thing today. I'll post it on Substack after, but they did a little song about Halloween, and they talked a lot about the masks that you could see out of. And the other story that I discovered and then I remembered it was sometime around the late 50s or early 60s started, and I think these were probably the first conspiracy theories, that you might have razor blades in candy. And I was reading something on a historical Edmonton page where that was a big discussion, and somebody was saying that was just a myth, that was like an urban legend, and somebody was saying no, we got one in our candy, got a razor blade. But that grew into a very huge thing where you couldn't have your candy until your parents looked through it, and back then people made stuff. You'd get like fudge somebody made, or the caramels, I think, were because I love those too. I can feel them pulling on my teeth right now, Cynthia. You just got that whole memory coming back to trying to chew on a caramel.
Yeah. Or the Rice Krispie treats. People would always make those.
Well, and I still have one of my neighbors and a friend of mine, she still makes fudge on Halloween. And you get a little baggie with a piece of homemade fudge in it and a rocket. Everybody remembers rockets, the rocket candies. And a note that says these were made by, and she puts her name and address and everything in the bag. And so we do wonder sometimes how much gets thrown out, but I always go by for, because that's how I have to keep dressing up, even though I'm in my 60s now, so I can go get some fudge from Karen's house on Halloween night. So I'll be making my trek over at some point tonight to get my fudge, because she makes really good fudge. So,
Look,
Do you know
caramel
about
candies.
Sorry?
The caramel candies, you know, when they took the apples and they have that hard red. Oh my gosh. Like there was only a few people that made those, and you really had to know who it was that made them. But sometimes they'd be caramel ones, or they'd be the
Candied
red
apples.
ones.
Candied apples,
Yes. And except they just about pull your teeth out, like trying to get through that surface. But once you broke through, oh my gosh, I love those things.
Well, and we used to get apples too, like the candied ones, but people candied them at home. It was like homemade treats, which now I don't think you see very many homemade treats anymore in kids' Halloween baskets. So it's and I think too, if we go back to sort of our Project Kin thing, is these are the kind of stories I think that are important to keep to record too, is sort of like this is what it was like, and the stories that, like, I'm remembering the story and not a whole lot of context around it, but that my mom told me about the tipping over the outhouses a thing. And it's like, those are just the little snippets. And I found some more stories of just sort of, but of keeping the photos and looking at that photo I showed earlier of me with the Mexican hat on. I have another one. And also, if what would be acceptable back then in the 60s when I was a kid for a costume would no longer be acceptable. I've got another one here, which I'll show you, because it's quite an elaborate costume. I don't know who made it, maybe his mother. There we go. So as you can see, this would have been Halloween of 61, because obviously, again, the little tip on dating photos, it says February of 62, but obviously it would have been the previous Halloween. And so we have the bunny, and I'm pretty sure that probably these costumes were both homemade because we didn't have a whole lot of money. So that's my big cousin dressed up and as an Indian, and me in my bunny suit with mitts. See, Canada, mitts on the costumes because it could very well be cold. But again, now probably you won't see a whole bunch of kids dressed up as a native anymore because that wouldn't be. But back in the day, that's what people dressed up as. I'm looking at the picture, Faith, and I'm wondering if your sister was dressed up as a hobo
Oh, likely.
with the
I
patches on the clothes and stuff, because
yes.
that was a
Oh,
very
I'm sure that's what it was. Yes. Which I don't think you could probably do that either.
yeah. Well, nobody know what. Well, you'd be accused maybe of dressing like a homeless person now or something, but it's
Well, yes. Yeah. But actually, I was just thinking one of the other things that I loved when I moved to when I was 10, we had moved and there were apartment buildings that were like kind of across the road, fairly close to where I lived. And there was probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 of them. And they were just like three levels, but you know, to a kid, um, like living in a house, to see a place that had 3 levels was a big deal. So that was a big apartment building to me. I live in Toronto now, so you know, a three level would be nothing. But we used to love those because there was probably I'm gonna say 4 apartments a floor. So there'd be 12, maybe 16 apartments in the building. So because it was cold, you know, it was great. We could go in and we could, you know, knock on all the doors. That's when you used to be able to go through apartments and do that. And now living in an apartment, I'm quite happy they don't let the kids all come to the doors. But as a kid, that was like a treat to be able to get to an apartment building and just go from one little apartment to another apartment to another apartment. And I remember, um, you know, as we were going through, we discovered that when one of the people opened the door, it was the principal from the high school. And we were just like, oh my gosh, it's Mr. Nib. We know where he lives. You know, as a kid, like that was a big deal to,
oh
you know,
yeah.
see you're out of context, and especially a principal of like the big high school. So
Mhm.
yeah, we were just like, oh my gosh, we have discovered like gold here. So I don't think he gave us anything too earth-shattering, but we were more impressed with that we found out where he lived as opposed to what he
Yeah,
gave us.
the secrets. Does anybody else have pictures to share? No? Well, no, and because you didn't celebrate, but anybody? Barbara, did you have some?
Um, I had pictures from Halloween and over during COVID, and it's funny thinking about how sensibilities have changed and looking back at those photos, which were so much fun at the time. I can show you one, well, a couple of them. But one of the things that I realized was that when, at the time that I took the pictures, I made a very soft.
Oh, we're losing your audio, Barbara. It didn't like it when you shared your screen. We've lost your audio. We can still see you, but I love the dinosaur on the skateboard though. No audio. And that must be the shoot. I don't know if Barbara can hear me telling her we have no audio. Let me find chat. My Zoom. Barbara, we lost your audio. No, as soon as you shared your picture, your audio vanished. Make me co-host before you go. Hmm. Okay. Somebody else talk and see if we've all lost sound.
Hello, testing, testing. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I hear you, Anne. Everybody else is muted, but I hear you still, but
Hello.
yep, got
Yeah,
you.
it's just Barbara, it seems.
Yep. You may have to exit and come back in, Barbara.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yes. No, I know what the problem was. It was a context switch. When I switched I'm using, AirPods and it switched and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, apologies. That was a skateboarding drag, T-Rex
Yeah.
who went up and down the sidewalk on his skateboard, which was pretty adorable. But
Yeah.
not being able to show the kids' faces, and allowing pictures, but please don't ever share these, was an interesting twist. And I, as a parent, would understand that.
Yeah.
And here we had it still, sunshine was up. It will be for a little while yet. And these were the very little kids that came out early on. But those kinds of things, just like razor blades in apples, are cultural moments, I think, that are important to look back on. And it's not always a case of it was always better, but it is a case of a holiday, a shared now international holiday, and how it has morphed consistent with the culture. I mean, we have Cynthia and I, looking at this crowd, Cynthia and I have an election next week, which is kind of, at least for the rest of us, culturally dominating the worldview. And excuse me, Faith, I don't know whether you're up in Canada or down here.
Toronto.
That's right, Toronto, you mentioned that. Yeah, I think that alone is an interesting part. I wish I had, oh wait, I could set it up, a camera to take pictures of everybody that comes to the door.
Hmm. Well, I'm curious to know how many political costumes there will be.
I'm sure there will be many.
My son dressed
Lots
as
of
back in the first round there, back in 2014 or whatever the first year was, 2016.
16. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was his costume. So
Yeah, the orange one.
yeah, the orange one. Who
Peach
else
is too
still
nice a
dresses
word.
up or goes to well, besides Anne and I, but who else still dresses up to go to parties?
I don't go to parties.
I don't go to parties either, but I dress up to hand out my candies.
That's what this is for.
Oh,
This is my first
Well, we had a
Halloween
lot of
costume.
kids.
this is your first
Is
Halloween?
it your first Halloween costume?
Yes,
Yay!
age 60, and I've finally got a Halloween
Yeah.
costume. That's why I dressed up.
It's an amazing costume. I love it.
It's going to be a new
is.
tradition, I think, every year from now on. So
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I was trying to throw you a celebration. There we go.
thank you.
Oh.
Shall I
Well,
tell you
I
about my
brought
witch?
So
my son
I love your witch.
Yes, I do too. It's wonderful.
This is a Pendle witch.
Oh,
And the Pendle
Pendle
witches, I
witch.
think you heard of them, yeah, from, I think it was Lancashire in north of England. It was in, again, 17th century, I think, going back that far. There was huge big witches trials, and they've started making all these
Oh,
character witches to sort of celebrate and
wow.
promote the story and everything. And my mum has got a whole collection of them, and she gave me this one. I like it because she's got like
Wow.
bare feet, very cute little toes. I don't know if you can see there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so Pendle Witches, that's becoming more of a thing, and Halloween and this is all coming together as well, and that's getting much more sort of people finding out about them and learning about the history of the Pendle Witches.
I had never heard of
Yeah,
that.
actually,
It have a good
that's
story to tell.
the stories of the English witch trials
Mm.
preceded, of course, the American ones. And I just recently discovered that one of my relations, my 9th great grandfather's second wife, was hung
Hang
as a
on.
witch. She was,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
How to work through
Well,
that.
it's the second wife because she died before she had any children. She was hung, and he remarried, and his third wife was the one who was a 9th great grandmother. But and his first wife died very soon after making the voyage to America. So he came in 1630 or 1640 or something like that, and she was offed by 1657, I think, so 54 or something like that, in Connecticut. So not the Salem witch trials. This had been about 20 years earlier. And you too,
So-
Cynthia?
And the Pendle Witches, weren't those the trials where there was a very young child, Janet, maybe was her name, like 9 years old, that they brought in and she testified against some of her family members? And
I
then,
don't know about that.
then
That sounds
later
really interesting.
on in her life, she was eventually also executed as a witch, or tried as a witch at least.
Okay.
I think
Wow.
so.
Yeah,
Wow.
didn't know that. I'll have to find out a bit more about it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And Barbara, why are the Salem witches so well known, but not the Connecticut witches? Was it the number of witches that were involved, or?
No, it was the historical artifacts. They had the artifacts from the
Okay.
Salem witch trials and have only more recently unearthed these within Connecticut. And I think for a long time, they were, the local people who would know that would just sort of like, we don't need to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. We don't want to be known for that. And I think what's happening now is that there's money to be made. These villages need tourism.
Yeah.
And Salem gets a lot of tourism around Halloween
Mm.
for witch trials. I heard about it because I was researching a name and bumped into it, and my relation was the second one in a town of Windsor, where the first one was an author, sort of a historical fiction, who had written some books about it, was very eager to promote the story for Windsor, Connecticut. And so they got all the way up to the state of Connecticut to get an exoneration for these 75 or something women, and men, actually, some men as well, who had been executed in Connecticut at varying times in the same sort of 1640 to 1670s period, as I recall. Cynthia, you may have some more of that. But yeah, it's really disturbing. And my 9th great grandmother's case, my relation's case, she wasn't even there when the crime happened. So a guy is out, a militia goes out for some training, and some doofus lets his gun go off and kills a guy. Well, it happens that the guy that was, and so they say, whoops, that's not good. So they fine him for poorly handling his arms. 2 years later, Lydia Gilbert, my ancestor, is held up on charges of having caused that gun to go off. And she was hung. And it happened that the guy who died was boarding in their house. And she was known to be an uppity woman. And she was aggressive, and she would have shouting matches with him. And clearly there was a problem, and that's why she offed him.
Wow.
Once again, the uppity woman. Can't let that happen.
Any woman who opened her mouth was an uppity woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's this
I
about
think I'm
opinions?
probably not a woman.
That's fascinating. Like I did not know there were witch trials in Scotland, Anne.
I didn't
Didn't
know
you?
about it until
No,
I
I think-
was given this as a present, and then I thought, oh, I thought it was just Pendle Witches. It was just the name of the company, but I just sort of did some reading around it and found out. So
How is Pendle? Pendle?
Pendle. I think it's Lancashire, Northern England.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Wow.
Well, I
I
think
found
that's
some fabulous engravings and books about the write-ups of the witch trials in England, but I was so enchanted with the images.
well, I just realized too, as you were showing your COVID pictures, Barbara, that my background would have been the COVID year. It would have been 2020 because we have the whole porch roped off, and we did that the same thing. We used a piece of troughing as a chute to throw the candy down, but that's because normally we wouldn't have the pumpkins and the black cats all across the whole porch there. But
Yeah.
and we had the caution, the do not enter tape up and everything, because that was the COVID year too. So,
Yeah.
which, as you say, is, and like the stories from before, is part of history. It's part of that experience and part of the culture of that. So,
And it's
It'll
going to
be
make
really
photos
interesting.
easier to date as well.
Sorry?
And it's going to make photos easier to date in the future as well. When you see the masks that people wearing, you'll know what years it was from. So
exactly. Ah,
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking too, is also for those kids. The picture that made me pause was a picture of a little girl who was maybe 5 at the time, and now she's like 10 and suddenly spurting up in height and everything. And I realized, oh wait, that's the same kid. Oh, right.
yeah.
These are formidable period for those kids.
Hmm.
I hope they took lots of pictures. I should
Yes.
share the pictures that I have. Oh.
So, who has favorite Halloween movies? Go ahead, Cynthia.
I watched a lot more when my daughters were young, but Hocus Pocus is the absolute go-to must watch. Or at least,
Yeah.
when she was young. We had to watch that every year. Absolutely. Yep.
That's a winner for sure.
There's all the scary films that
Yeah,
you
I'm not
can't
much
do
of a
with the
horror
kids are
fan
too
myself.
little.
But Hocus Pocus is a good one. My my other daughter-in-law and I watched Haunted Mansion last night, which is actually it's a Disney movie made from the ride, like but it was good. It was funny. If you hadn't been on the ride, you would still, there's a ride in Disney World called the Haunted Mansion. If you had never been on the ride, you could still follow the movie, like you didn't need to know that. But there were little what they call Easter eggs. For those of you who had been on the ride, there were all these cute little Easter eggs in the movie. So it was fun. We enjoyed it. But because I don't
Well,
want,
I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean
yeah, there
was
we
a
go.
ride before it was a whole modern movie series, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I would remember a neighbor when our kids were little, a neighbor had a very clever idea. This was when the technology was quite new, took a sheet and hung it tight, and behind the sheet they used their projection TV to project the film of The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is really a Halloween film. And oh, it was so cool because it was just so you know, it was such a perfect cartoon for Halloween. I have these windows that lead right to the front. I always thought about doing that, but it was like, ugh, too much trouble.
A lot of work for one day.
A lot of work for one day.
I'm
I
lucky
hung
my
big.
next door neighbor has a massive display with inflatables. So there's
Mhm.
got to be close to like 8 feet tall Frankenstein and pumpkins and all sorts of stuff. So I thought, okay, well, that'll attract enough attention to this side of the street. So I threw a few things, and I did put some pumpkins out. We didn't carve them this year, but we did put some pumpkins out. Some of our pumpkins that are, I bought them at Michael's. I don't know what they're made out of foam or something, but they have lights in them. So, but that'll be about it for this Halloween. So.
Yeah, I have, this is as I said, my cross the street neighbor.
That's
And he
they've
does
got,
this,
like, that top one almost looks like Day of the Dead too.
oh,
the
he's got all
black thing.
and every year he adds a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
That was a couple of years ago. And we have all the neighbors come routinely to take pictures for their Instagram posts in front of
Yes.
they may as well have a little, names and things next to it. So I have to do something for the same reason. I this year have, well, I was trying to show that picture earlier, but it's a ghost made of sheet, a sheet over a big stick with a light on it. That's the best I could do. And a real pumpkin that I actually carved yesterday.
Good for you. Yeah, we didn't do any real pumpkins this year. It's just too busy of a time.
What's the story behind the pumpkins? Where's that tradition from?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me consult that sheet I have here.
I want to think it's the story of Ichabod Crane, right?
It could be.
So,
actually, I didn't go as far as pumpkins carving. That's a fascinating.
Didn't they start out in Ireland with they did turnips?
Yes, I read that. Yep. When I was reading Halloween history. You're right.
And,
they used to carve
I
turnips in Ireland.
Initially, when they would when Samhain, Halloween came up and everyone extinguished their home fires, they would build a community fire, and then everyone for survival, community support, everyone would take fire from that one community fire and take it back to their house and relight their fire, and they carried it in like a carved out root vegetable, of some sort. Cool. But I think it developed from that. At least that's one story.
You never know what the internet's going to tell you, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Jack-o'-lanterns originated in Irish myth, Ireland and Scotland, and
there is
I'm English. I'm English.
I'm English.
I live in Scotland, but I'm English.
There is one example, example. It looks like a rutabaga to me, but a rutabaga is also a turnip. It's just that they get bigger than turnips. But there's one in a museum. If you look it up, you can see it, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
The pumpkins are far friendlier looking than the little turnip rutabagas are. It's scary. They carved little teeth and everything. It's pretty scary.
Crazy.
I mean, there's a difference. One's underground and one's above ground. Wow. Go figure.
Oh, okay. There's
did I lose my audio again?
Because Kathy likes to dress up a lot. There's the whole look from top to bottom.
Is that you, Kathy?
It is there. Yes, that's me.
Wow.
I do a little more, like I had I didn't know, I was trying to get the eye makeup stuff and I went, no, I can't get that far. So yeah, that's me with guns and swords. And there's our pumpkins carved. This is our decorations, like when we used to go all out. So Lawn Zombie is my favorite. He came from some store in Great Falls. That's a very bad, tiny picture, but my son and I dressed up to give out candy. I take the mask off for the little kids and then I put it on when the big kids are coming. Mike actually stood in a corner by the sidewalk. He stood and he'd stand deadly still until the bigger kids came, and then he'd jump out at them. And then that's just another one of that was a smoke machine we had at one point. So, and another one of my pumpkin carvings, not mine, my kid did that, but, and our decorations are quite modest for the neighborhood. We had a massive haunted house in the neighborhood for several years that attracted people from all over the city. And including food trucks started to come on the street. And it was two neighbors, and they had to store all the decorations in storage containers during the year, but they did from their garages. Then you would go through stuff in the yard, and it was all, they did a theme one year, a post-nuclear war thing, and they had kids volunteering as actors in there, and there'd be you walked through this haunted house that was just amazing. And they just did such a good job with it, but it get you lots of people to the neighborhood for handing out the
Yeah,
candy.
and all those kids are now working in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. Did all that stuff, but it was remarkable the work they put into it. Like they'd start setting it up in beginning of September to get it all ready. Like it was
Wow.
amazing. So, and they started doing different hour, like they do earlier in the day on Halloween, or maybe even the weekend, depending on when Halloween was, the weekend before. And they do the no scare, which then the things weren't for the little kids to go through. They had more of the lights on, and none of the actors were leaping out of things screaming at you. So that was no scare. And then they had the scare part. So it's quite amazing, but there's still a lot of places with, as I say, like we had quite a few decorations, but there's a lot of places with quite a bit more than ours. So it's a big thing in this.
What do you do for Christmas?
Not much outside because it's really cold. We just put up lights. We don't have, I shouldn't say that. I have an inflatable Yoda wearing a Christmas hat, that he goes out. But other than that, we just do mostly lights. And I picked this tradition up in the Eastern US in New Jersey, where my brother and sister-in-law live, of candles when you're driving through the country and everything, of the candles in the windows. And so I have that. I actually don't take mine down. I just don't turn them on in the summer because it's light until midnight. But now we'll probably start turning them on. We'll turn them all on tonight. So that's my more like Christmas, and then the colored lights. But we don't it's just like, it's too cold to be outside decorating at Christmas. So, but
Well, I'm inspired. I think maybe that's a good place to start, rather to wrap this up, thinking about our next holiday. Yes. And getting out there and making some memories, and all of that trouble it takes to do that. Look at the memories that it leaves for generations to follow. And I think that's kind of what it's about.
And those traditions and the meaningfulness behind the photos that you have, and like your doll, Anne, like it's just where we have objects, and it's like, oh well, it's just a doll, but it's not just a doll. It's got a whole history behind it, and I think that's part of what we're all about, is the stories behind the photos, and uncovering all these traditions that made up part of our life and our kids' life. So. Well,
Thank you so much.
What a Halloween party, everyone.
Rawr.
Might have to make another one next year.
I think we have a tradition in the making.
I think we do.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care now. Bye.
Happy
Well done, Kathy.
I like the balloons there. Did that go well?